Well, hello and welcome back to Toys Thursday with Johnny Tiger on Thursday, February, on Thursday, March 4th, 2021. It is March 4th, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, sorry, a little bit confused and elated. Why am I elated? Because my girlfriend has been released from hospital today and things look like they're um, going for the better. So that's definitely a relief. I spent the last 2 days really stressed out, really worried about her. What with the pandemic and unable to get across the border to go see her while she was delirious with pain in the hospital was very, very rough. So anyway, things are looking up now, and we'll wish my beautiful girl speedy recovery. I read a lot of books. Now, I know what that just sounds like. That sounds like I'm saying I'm really smart, but I'm really not. Because if the kind of books I read are like technical manuals and self-help and psychology and astrology and all that stuff, then maybe yeah, maybe I'll be a really smart person. But unfortunately, that's not the kind of book I read a lot of. I read a lot of science fiction. I read a lot of horrors. I read a lot of mysteries, crime, action, thrillers. But above all, the one genre that I read the most, and if you can see the character in front of the camera right now, you probably guessed it already. Yes, I read a lot of swords and sorcery fantasies. I will as long as he's got swords, as long as he got magic and dragons and stuff like that in it, I'll almost always read it, no matter if it's good or bad. I say almost because that there are some that I really had to struggle. I know this is going to uh, make a lot of people go WTF, but I had a heck of a time reading Lord of the Ring. It's just not something that I enjoyed. And Song of Ice and Fire, aka Game of Thrones, took a little bit to get into. And the Shannara series by Terry Brooks were definitely very difficult for me to read, uh, mostly just because it was in many parts a rip off of Lord of the Ring. But I read them, and you know, uh, again, if it's got fantasy and swords and warriors and fair maidens and stuff like that, I'll read it. I'll give it a try at the very least because I'm just so infatuated with that kind of fantasy. And when it comes to swords and sorceries, there is one character, one classic character that looms head and shoulders, sometimes literally head and shoulders, above almost all other heroes. And if you have no idea who Conan the Barbarian is, then you cannot really consider yourself a sword and sorcery fantasy fan because no, Conan the Barbarian has to be like the most recognizable, the most classic warrior that been around in modern fantasy history. Why is Conan so uh, easy to like for fantasy loving people? Why do I personally love Conan the Barbarian? Because he is not complicated. He is in many ways he's a little bit like me, or I am a little bit like him. He's the kind of guy that just likes to eat a lot, drink a lot, and have a lot of fun with the women that he loved. And then, if he had a problem that he couldn't talk his way out of, he generally solved the problem with his sword or his axe or his fist. So Conan was a non-complicated kind of guy who didn't pretend to be virtuous, who didn't pretend that he hated to be what he was. He just was. He just was Conan. He just was a really muscular, really strong, super powerful warrior who enjoy the heck out of life for the most part. And that's why I personally find that Conan the Barbarian was so amazing as a character. Not like a lot of these other characters we see in fantasy books that, oh my God, why does it have to be me? I don't want to be the prophecy. I don't want to be the hero. I just want to go home. Woohoo! I don't want to do this. Conan didn't have that problem going on. I mean, there were times when he got roped into doing something he really didn't like, but for the most part, if Conan had to do something, he just went ahead and do it. And if he couldn't do it, then he wasn't ashamed of running away either. In one of the Conan books, Hour of the Dragon, Conan, after being deposed from his throne by the evil sorcerer Lotaton, was thrown into a dungeon to rot. While there, he was rescued by a very curvaceous, very sexy slave girl who fell in love with him, and she snuck a weapon and key to him so he could escape. But unfortunately, she didn't have the key to the main gate of the dungeon. So, to escape from the dungeon, Conan had to crawl through uh, one of the scariest places in that castle, which was called the pit. It's like the little tunnel area uh, in behind or underneath the dungeon. He had to go through that to escape. Why was the pit so scary? Because the pit was not empty. The pit was haunted by something that ate people. In front of the camera, we have the guy I've been talking about this whole time, Conan the Barbarian. And this was made by Todd McFarlane, I believe 2003. One of the best muscular sculpt I've ever seen on an action figure. And I hope you guys can make it out on the camera. Just look at the details in the muscles, and I mean there's a lot of action figures with muscles, but most of them the muscles don't move very naturally. They don't conform to the movement, the pose of the character. But if you look at the pose, look at his armpit, his deltoid, his pecs, with when his right arm is raised over his head, and how the muscles that pull tight against his frame, and you can see a hint of rib cage, and the muscle is pulled really tight, and there's just a hint of tension. Like this is one of those action figures that just looking at it conveys he's in his emotion, he's moving, he's ready to cut down whatever gets in his way. Of course, he is posed in midair. He's jumped up in midair, raising his axe over his head, and his sword is blocking, leading the way in front of him. And Conan also, let me turn him around. Conan also have long hair to his like shoulder length hair. Um, Usually he's depicted with black hair. Just amazingly well sculpted action. Well, I can't even call him an action figure because there's not much you can do with this character or this figure than in the pose he is in. You can't really change anything. He is stuck in that jumping up in the air, and he's in the process of landing on his enemy with his weapons ready. And he's stuck in that pose. You can't change it. So this is more of a statue than an action figure. But what a nice looking figure nonetheless. It's all the muscular details and the the way his arms and his body is posed. There's just so much uh, being conveyed here that is really awesome. On top of that, Let me take him off the base. I'm gonna take the base and put it up against the backdrop here. You guys can see that the base is littered with debris and there's a lot of bones and skulls on the base. So this conveys that Conan, in this situation, he is fighting an enemy in a place where a lot of people has died. And that is exactly where this action figure is conveying, is trying to portray, is Conan's battle in the pit when he was trying to escape from the dungeon. Now, as impressive as Conan is, he is not the main attraction of the show today, but he is very fittingly, very suited for opening the show today because uh, he is an arch enemy, or he was made to battle our first figure that we're going to show today. You see, once upon a time, I read somewhere on the internet that everybody loved monkeys. Everybody loved monkeys. Now, while I personally can't really agree with that because I don't find that I have any special attraction to monkeys, I did have a chimpanzee and a monkey as pets when I was little, but they didn't really make really good pets. Didn't really like them. Um, and I don't really go through the toy aisle and say, "Wow, it would be nice to have a monkey or a gorilla." But with that said, I did somehow, one way or another, end up with some super badass, super impressive looking gorilla related figures in my collection. And it is those that we're going to take a look today. These giant, beastie monkeys, apes, gorillas. We are not going to see King Kong. So if you are thinking King Kong, then you can forget about it because I do not have a King Kong in my collection, uh, unfortunately. But yeah, so anyway, here is the first ape we're going to show, the first monstrous creature. Look at that. Look at that ferocious beast. It's a gray ape and it is ferocious. Look at the fangs in its mouth and how it has this huge clawed hand that is just reaching forward to grasp its prey. In its left hand, I don't know if you guys can make it out on camera, the left hand is holding something, and these are bones. They look like shin bones or some kind of leg bones uh, from something that it killed and devoured. This is Conan's nemesis in the pit. This creature is called the Haunter of the Pit, and it is a killer gorilla. It's a gray ape that the evil sorcerer kept in the castle. Whoever tried to enter or leave the dungeon through the pit would get devoured by this gray ape. I always thought apes eat bananas, but apparently this one likes to eat people. It is a hefty, hefty action figure. Like, it weighs almost a pound, I would say. It's quite. It doesn't look that tall, especially posed here with Conan. Um, you can see that they form a nice little battle scene here with Conan jumping up in the air, ready to land on the ape with his sword and axe, and the ape is reaching up and grabbing at his leg like this. So that's what these are supposed to look like. That's how they're supposed to pose. They're supposed to go together. They're a set. Okay? This is a scene of their final battle with each other. So standing like this, the gray ape doesn't seem that big because Conan is so high up in the air. But let me take Conan away and let me give you a regular size human character uh, as comparison, and you guys will see just how massive this gray ape is. If you've watched your Marvel movies and recognize this guy immediately, this is the Winter Soldier, Bucky, uh, and he's more or less the size of a regular person, maybe a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, but yeah, he's generally the size of a regular person. And if we stand Bucky up with the gray ape, the hunter of the pit here, you can see that the gray ape is twice as wide as the winter soldier and taller. And the arm of the gray ape just loom way overhead like this. And the hand of the ape is so big that it can actually grasp the winter soldier like that. Huh? Oh, now that the winter soldier is in trouble. Okay, let go. Okay. Um, and let's turn them to side profile. You'll see that standing in side profile, the ape is massively thick. Got this huge torso, just so much bigger than the winter soldier. So this is how you can appreciate the scale of this gray ape. It just it's a chunky, really thick, really hefty action figure. It's a scary looking ape uh, that make a superhero or super soldier like the Winter Soldier here look just puny, positively puny. Yeah, look at that scale different. And and what's really worth considering is let me pick the gray ape, the hunter, up this way. You can see that he's actually posed in a crouch. His legs are bent underneath him, which means he's already so much bigger than a regular human-sized character. If he could stand straight up, if he can actually straighten his leg, if the joints actually work, he would be massive. That would be one big monkey. Again, the Gray Ape, the Hunter of the Pit, and Conan the Barbarian were made by Todd McFarlane in around, I think, 2003. Todd McFarlane have had a history of making big, really badass, really impressive looking gorillas and apes. So the Gray Ape, the Hunter of the Pit, was definitely not his first, and it wasn't going to be his last. In fact, about 5 years prior to making The Hunter of the Pit, in 1998, Todd McFarlane created a character and an action figure that was, at that time, the best he's ever created. Before I show you the character or the action figure, let me tell you the sad story of a soldier named Sergeant Stephen Smith. Sergeant Stephen Smith, I mean, that's just kind of an awkward name to say, so we'll just call him Stephen. Sergeant Stephen was a friend of Al Simon. Who's Al Simon? Well, if you know your Spawn comic book, Al Simon was uh, Spawn when Spawn was alive and human. So before Spawn became Spawn. Um, Basically, long story short, Al Simon was the one of the United States best soldier and CIA assassin, special operation guy, and then he got betrayed by his own people and they killed him. And because he was so filled with hate and he was such a good warrior, the devil recruited him and made a deal with him that the devil said, "We'll give you all this demonic power and you can go back and finish your unfinished business as long as you fight for the army of hell. You lead the army of hell during the war between heaven and hell." And Al Simon said, okay. And then he became this creature called Spawn, which became one of the most successful comic book in the mid 90s. So back to Sergeant Stephen. Sergeant Stephen was Al Simmons' uh, best friend and student. He was also a very tough professional soldier. But just like how the government set up Al Simmons to be murdered, they set up Sergeant Stephen to be donated, to be put through an experiment to get turned into a bioweapon. They were working on a project where they could fuse the body and mind of a human with some of the world's toughest and strongest animals. So the idea was that you would have the physical attribute of those animals, while you would have your human mind would be able to control them. So you would have the brain power, the mind of a human, and the body and physical attribute of those animals. Well, they tried to fuse Sergeant Stephen with the world's biggest silverback gorilla, and then implant him with all kind of cybernetics and robotic technology to make him even stronger. But unfortunately, the scientists messed up. So rather than the gorilla having 80% of uh, the human brain power, it went the other way. The gorilla ended up having 80% of a gorilla's uh, brain power and only 20% of human willpower and brain cell in there. So they created a killing machine out of this combination of Sergeant Stephen and the silverback gorilla while not having the uh, ability to control this new vicious bioweapon. So this new gorilla, now called Scigor, it's short for cybernetic gorilla, because like I said, he's implanted with all kind of robotic technology as well. Cyborg escaped from the government's control and went on a rampage. In his very confused, very scared mind, in what's left of Sergeant Stevens' mind, he just wanted to find his best friend, Al Simon, because he knew of and if anyone could help him in this world, it would be Al Simon. Unfortunately, while Sergeant Stephen was going under the experiment being turned into Scigor, Al Simon had already been murdered by his own government. So when Scigor was looking for Al Simon was no longer Al Simon. Al Simon was now this demonic creature called Spawn. So in his very simple, very primitive mind and very confused state, Scigor decided that this creature, this demonic creature that kind of smelled like his old friend, must be responsible for the death of Alcimon. He didn't realize that Spawn was Alcimon. He thought Spawn was the murderer who killed Alcimon. So Scigor went after Spawn, and well, we can go on and on, but basically Scigor ended up uh, getting defeated by Spawn, and then they later became friends and went on. Scigor went on other adventures on his own and became kind of a super monkey, like a super ape, superhero gorilla, and had some really heroic thing that he ended up doing. So that was a kind of quite a bit to say. So Cyborg in 1998, Todd McFarlane made a Cyborg action figure, and it became one of the best action figures he's ever made. And even today, comparing to action figures of today, it's still one of the best action figures that can be found. And here he is. This is Scigor from 1998. Look at this huge thing. There's so much to appreciate on this action figure. Um, but let me first give you the detail. Scigor stands almost 9 inches tall and almost 6 inches wide, and is massively thick in the torso. Look at that ferocious face with the huge fangs, open mouth, and look at all the robotic parts that get mixed into this gorilla. They got a robotic left arm that ends in a huge, wickedly sharp hook, and these wires that are on the body, these are like real wires. These are like real material, wire materials, and these chains that hang from the body, these are real metal. These are real metal chains. These are really cool. Um, a lot of muscles in the arms, in the body. Let me turn him around and see the muscular details in his back, and of course more technology there. Um, he is mostly gray and purple, and there's a lot of little intricate details like dials and buttons and lights and all kind of technology all over him. This is one impressive looking cybernetic gorilla. Take a look at his side profile. Big creature. Look at his feet. Even his feet, you have one foot that is more normal, like a normal gorilla foot, and the other foot, the right foot, is all robotic. Got the kind of skeletal, robotic, mechanical look to it. Just on the appearance alone, make this a really awesome action figure. But there's more to him. If you take the chest plate of Scigor and let me do this without breaking him, pull this open. The chest compartment pops open like this. Look at that. Look at that. You can see inside this creature, inside the belly. And what's inside? There's a little robotic monkey inside the body. Like this is, it's like a little robotic monkey controlling the giant robotic ape from inside the belly. Kind of remind me of those old Voltron robot action figures. Well, let's get this back in there. Try to because it's a really old action figure, like I said, from 1998. So you got to handle it with care. The plastic will become brittle after this long. So there you go. You know, put the chest plate back, and you wouldn't even know there's a tiny robotic monkey inside. Back when this was created, again, this is a almost 9-inch tall action figure, huge, like with real metal chains and real wiring materials, a companion creature inside the body. This was only $10 back then. This is crazy. Like this is how cheap action figures were back then. I miss those good old days. Now let me bring the Winter Soldier back in the frame and then do a size comparison with a normal human-sized character. Here is a Winter Soldier standing, whoa, in front of Scigor. You can see that Scigor is yeah, head and shoulder taller than Winter Soldier. Again, the hand is big enough to fit over the head of the Winter Soldier like that, and the giant hook in the other hand, this can definitely grab onto a character like Winter Soldier like that. I'm starting to feel sorry for the Winter Soldier because he's got grabbed by the hunter of the pit, and now he's grabbed by a cybernetic gorilla, and one bigger than the next. We're just getting some really scary looking monkeys going on here. Get them back to back, back to back comparison like that. You can really appreciate how big Cyborg is. I mean, he's like twice as wide, twice as thick, and uh, at least 3 inches taller than Winter Soldier. Next to him, and by the way, like I said, Cyborg here was $10 back then, 1998. Winter Soldier here, who basically feels and looks like a toy next to him, costs $29 today. $29. This little guy, this giant ape, $10. Yeah, good old days. I miss the good old days. And 1998 was not the last time that Scigor would be shown to us. Just last year, McFarlane came up with a new line of action figure called Raw 10. We talked about this in some previous episode when we reviewed the Battlesnake and the Raptor and the Shark, the robotic animal program. As soon as he announced the robotic animal program, those of us who were big followers of McFarlane, big followers of Spawn, we knew that if he was making a robotic animal program line of action figures, that's going to be Scigor. Because Scigor is a cybernetic gorilla. He's going to appear in that line of action figure. And indeed he did. Scigor made his re-entrance into the action figure world last year. A good 22, 23 years after the last Scigor, which was in 1998, the one we just showed you. How is this new one comparing to the old one? Is he better? Is he bigger? Is he meaner? Is he cooler? Well, let me show you, and you can tell me. Whoa. I mean, you want to talk about big? This is big. The previous Cyborg was already a monster of a figure. It was about 9 inches tall. Now this one, this new one that came out last year, this is over a foot tall. And look at the size of this thing. This is seriously big. I don't even know if the frame of the camera is going to capture the whole figure. I'm going to pull him back a little bit so hopefully he gets in the frame. I mean, look at the size of this thing. This version of Cyborg is massive. Like his arms, his biceps are about as big around as my forearm. That's how big this guy is. Let me turn him around so you can see him from the back. He's huge. This is one seriously big cybernetic gorilla. Like this transcended from wow into holy, insert your own swear word here category. Again, big, muscular, a lot of cool details, a lot of cybernetic, even more than before. You can see all these blocky cybernetic parts in the flesh of the gorilla, in the chest, all these dials and lights and buttons. This time it looked like the left foot is the one that's robotic rather than the right one like before. This one doesn't have the chest panel that can open. This one is quite simple and it's really big, but it's not super heavy because it's actually made of a hollow plastic. It would have to be, otherwise this thing would weigh like 5 pounds. It's really big. Like I said, this thing stands about, I would say 12, 13 inches tall, and at least from shoulder to shoulder, I would say almost 8 inches across the shoulder. And the girth of the body is so big that I can't even wrap my hand around it. I can barely get my two hands around it. Look at this. This is how thick it is. If I try to grab it around the shoulder, yeah, I can't even wrap my hands around it. Two hands can't even reach around the action figure. This is one seriously girthy action figure. It's huge. And what's really amazing was McFarlane was able to price this guy at $20. Last year, came out last year, sold for $20. Okay, Cyborg, gigantic Cyborg, $20. Puny tiny winter soldier here. Now let me stand them together so you look at this. Look at this. Winter soldier barely come up to his belly button. Puny little winter soldier, $29. Gigantic Cyborg, $20. Right? This is something to really be considered. So I don't know how Todd McFarlane's able to sell his action figure that cheap. Maybe exploiting some cheap child laborers in China or something. I don't know. But anyway, look at even the arm of this Scigor. The arm alone is bigger than the Winter Soldier's entire person. Let me hold it like this. Look at that. The arm alone is bigger than the entire Winter Soldier. And the size of the fist on this Scigor is wow. Wow. Like this is some seriously gigantic gorilla. This is one honking big monkey. So before we go, I'm going to bring the previous two monkeys back in the frame. So we do a family comparison, monkey to monkey. This is a new Scigor standing with the old Scigor, and as you can see, the new Scigor makes the old Scigor look like a baby gorilla, even though the old one is already massive. The new one, twice the size. It's huge. Okay, and then we put that aside. We take the old Scigor, and then we bring the Hunter of the Pit back in the frame. Hunter of the Pit standing with the old Scigor. Again, Hunter of the Pit, already a large action figure, but the old Scigor makes it look small. So here it is. Here you got it. Three giant apes. Three giant apes standing together. Every one of them more massive than the previous one. By the way, this new Scigor, that's the biggest one in the way in the back there. That uh, from part of my birthday gift from my friend Ian and Darren from last year, from 2020. Thanks, guys. Awesome, awesome action figure. One of the most badass gorillas there is on the in the action figure market right now. Very pleased with this guy. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Fitness Friday. Maybe we'll do some monkey workout tomorrow. I don't know.